I don't know why I hadn't started or done an episode of Little Women already. I think before I started my podcast, actually, I was writing about Little Women a lot, so I think that might be the reason why. I'm looking back on when I used to use Medium instead of Substack, and I think, yeah, I wrote an article about Little Women. Did I ever finish it though? Actually, I need to check out. Hold on. Yeah, I mean, this I can actually use this article to help me. Um, I can actually use it to help me do this episode actually, because this article was titled "When I Think About It, What If I Relate to All the Little Women Daughters?" And I write, when I first watched Little Women for the first time, I remember feeling really connected to Jo to a T. That she never felt feminine. She had big dreams. She didn't feel like she could get to, but did in the end. I think relating to each one of them is the way of being a woman, and I feel like each of them have qualities that make up being Little Women, and you realize that relating to all four of them is just an experience and relating to just one. Little Women is a film that feels like it has an umbrella of layers involved in it. For example, going from children to adults in a flash. My favorite quote being, "I can't believe childhood is over." Jo March. Jo March says this quote on Meg's lap when Meg is getting ready for her wedding. The quote explains so much, and choosing for Jo to say it at that exact time is huge. It's when you get married, you're no longer a child, and so many life responsibilities await you. Jo only says this quote when Meg gives her speech on how she wants home with John, and she wants all these things that finally make the straw break in Jo's head. That if Meg wants all the things she says she does, childhood is over as one of the sisters fly the nest. I also realize now that all of the March sisters have different dreams, and Meg's is to have a happy home and be a wife. Just because my dreams are different from yours doesn't mean they're not important. It's as though Jo can't fathom childhood being over, and that's another quality that we, all of us watching, can relate to. The time when laughing and childish things are over, especially when marriage and kids are involved. And also, I feel like while we're watching that scene, it's as though Meg and Jo have always been so different anyways, and that's why they're in two different minds and not on the same page. Meg wants marriage and the frilly things, and Jo doesn't want either of those things, which is why when I think about it, the sisters are so different from each other, and that's what makes them unique. I realise also that Jo is probably the most childlike in all four of them. Yeah, in all four of them, with the way that her relationship with Laurie is and how she interacts with all of her sisters too. And only after a binge change does Jo change also. Another thing is that Jo is the kind of character that goes against the grain and doesn't conform to society's rules. I'm kind of editing or like during this episode. It doesn't come from size draw. She doesn't really like frilly dresses and her long hair, which is probably why it's her first idea. Try to save money for Beth. It doesn't seem to be a big deal for her when she rushes down there with her hair all cut off, and everyone gasps in shock that she'd do such a thing. You've lost your one beauty. But Jo doesn't see it in that way, as with being the only one in the family that acts manly and tomboyish, there's the least she could do and that she won't miss it. Jo has always been a sister I connected to, essentially because she was a writer. I know what it's like to feel like my dreams are unattainable, even though you feel like you work so hard. You write until you can't anymore, and still it feels like it's hopeless, especially when the first scene in Jo's journey with her writing is her being rejected. It feels like a kick in the teeth to all of us, as in a pool of the writing industry, it can feel like we're all sitting ducks just waiting to be noticed. Another reason is Jo's nature and what makes her who she is. In the picture above, this is when Jo goes on to talk about women and how all women are fit for is getting married, and they're not seen as anything more than that. So from that, Jo is also a feminist, and a lot of other feminists can relate to that. Someone who talks about the way women are mistreated and judged. Plus, when I think about this speech, I know that Jo said it at a time when she felt defeated. In her head, she was probably thinking about the conversation she had with the guy at the bookstore who asked if the main character could be married by the end, so if there was nothing else the main character could do. Jo goes on to say that in an exasperated tone, "But I'm so lonely." It makes it feel like everything she said in her speech is true, but she also does wish for marriage and happiness as she contemplates her answer to Laurie. I'm gonna pause there for a moment, but I need to, what's it called? Obviously, like I said, I'm reading off of this article which I was writing on Medium, and I feel like maybe after this episode's finished, I will go away to finish it. So yeah, and then I might probably post it, but I think it will be on Medium, and then I'll post it onto probably my podcast TikTok account. So that's where it will be. Joe's speech is as follows: women, they have minds and they have souls as well as just hearts, and they've got ambition and they've got talent as well as just beauty. I'm so sick of people saying that love is just all a woman is fit for. I'm so sick of it. I personally love this speech, even after watching the film for the first time, and it stuck with me ever since. I would call myself a feminist for certain, as everything about women is important, just as Joe states there too. I feel like a monologue like this holds so much weight, because literally everything that women want to be seen for. Women want to be seen for their talent and ambition before their beauty. It's as though sometimes men end up seeing a woman's beauty before their mind. When they realize the mind the woman has, they become intimidated. So the speech is another reason why Joe as a character struck to me in the first place. Sometimes looking back, I think was writing one of the main reasons, if not the only one. But that's not true. Actually, I do admit her writing drew me to her initially, but every time I rewatch it, I realize it's just everything that makes Joe Joe. Wishing she could stay in childhood forever, which is a feeling we all feel. Not feeling like she's desirable for marriage and will ever marry, which makes her a character with flaws, which is always important. It's characters like her and also Fleabag who we need in this world. A character that knows I have all these things that deem me unworthy and I'm not perfect, which brings me on to my favourite scene in Little Women, which is the proposal scene. Looking at this picture, in fact, makes me want to compare both Little Women's one day, as I in fact have been avoiding the 1994 one, even though it does have notable actresses. I do know that in these two scenes, as a comparison, Christian Bale's Laurie ends up kissing Winona Ryder's Joe, which for me doesn't feel necessary, but let's not go off on a tangent. I will circle back there though, actually. In this scene, Joe goes on to tell Laurie and lists all the reasons why they wouldn't be happy together, which is not always something you see in a proposal scene, but quite necessary because it's rare. Most proposal scenes go the normal way, where the man gets down on one knee and proposes, and the woman says yes, of course, not to say there aren't a lot of no's, but I do feel like you see less no's in films than you do in real life. I love the way, for one thing, how the scene feels so relaxed at first. It's not tense or anything, and Joe starts off saying, why, should we run off and join a pirate ship? It makes it feel so casual and relaxed, and not like a scene where something bad is going to happen. I guess now that I think about it also, where it happens is not a dead giveaway either. On a hill, on a sunny day, this is where Laura decides to propose to her. Your initial thought is that maybe they're going to roll down the hill or do something silly rather than have a conversation such as this one on a big hill. It also feels nice knowing that I'm reading Little Women at the moment, and just as I was when I found out the movie was coming out back in 2019, I was excited for the hill scene. Not that it is called the hill scene in the book, but it'll be nice to see how they differ and which one I love more. I haven't actually got onto that, like, even in the book. I haven't read it in a very long time. To summarize, I love the way Laurie looks at Joe. After she says that line, as if the expression on his face says it all, I love how Joe and Laurie go on to follow each other on the top of that hill as if they battle it out for each other's affection. I love how Joe goes on to reject Laurie in the whole entire conversation, but instead of just saying no to it, she explains why, which to me makes it look like there is love there with Joe and Laurie, and I think that's what makes her regret it afterwards. She did in fact love him, just not in the same way he did. I love how although Laurie feels dejected and rejected, he still takes the loss well in saying that one day Joe will marry and he will watch as the loser in the battle for her affection. Lastly, which is more about being the loser, after the proposal scene, it makes it seem like Joe is the loser way more than Laurie is, as he goes on to fall for Amy and announce their engagement. It's as if it goes on to say, who really did lose in the end? Was it Laurie or was it Joe? And then because of the way the film ends and Joe ends up with someone else, does it tell us that no one is the loser and everyone is in fact happy with people they've chosen? I'll go with that answer, actually. It's so funny. I'm really happy that I'm very happy that I'm talking about Little Women in this episode, because Little Women's one of my favorite films. But anyways, back onto the article. Another thing I also loved, more so than about the Little Women daughters, I loved how Laurie came to be infatuated with the sisters, also which looking back makes sense how he ends up with one sister rather than none of them. I realised that as soon as he met them one night after the ball when Meg scorched her dress, he was taken with them, and if you think about it, he loved the entire family. Sure, he fell in love with Joe first, but it makes you think, is it only because he met Joe first? If he had met any of the others first, would he have loved them and not her? I feel like on that bit that I wrote in my article, it's like I wanted to touch on the fact that, like, yeah, it's just I realized that when he was in their house and how he was looking at all of them, and he just liked what, you know, what their mother kind of installed in them, and kind of like what it meant to be a march, yeah, to be one of the March girls and to be a Little Women. I think, remember, Little Women's supposed to be the what is it? It's something that their dad calls them. Yeah, my Little Women, which is so adorable, by the way. But yeah, so that's the remark. So I think it's like Laura has this idea of them, of how mommy has shaped them. So I feel like it's a thing where it's like he knew he had to be in the family no matter what. Like he had to make, yeah, he had to make his stamp and he had to be in it either way. I feel like I should probably do this actually. I'm reading to you guys, it's giving audiobook, but I'm also touching on things as well. Yeah, back on to the article again. On top of my question, I recently finished watching the original version of Little Women and I have thoughts. I'll talk about the ones pertaining to each character first. With Joe, I don't feel like I felt this way when I watched the 2019 version, but maybe I did. I just hadn't admitted it yet. Classic me. I know that it's silly really, because in the time frame that Little Women is set in, it's not realistic that Joe would end the film without being married. And if you also add in the fact that after her chat with Laurie, she does realise she is lonely, which is why she ends with Friedrich. Not only that reason, of course, but I think if we talk about her speech, and if we also talk about how Joe really did fall for him, this person who saw her for who she really is, I guess in that way that she thought Laurie would want to change, Frederick just seemed to accept who she was and an extraordinary writer. He pushed her and she saw him as a mentor, and so I think that's why that leads to where it does. But to be honest, it's the only thing I realize I don't like about Little Women. I mean, Beth passes and all of them end up with a love interest. I think, yes, like I said, it's to do with the time frame, but there's something in me that even her conversation with Laurie, he seems to know that one day she'll marry, and that's just how it's going to be. I guess in a way, Greta wouldn't have wanted to change the story so much with tweaks here and there when redoing something, but not a total do-over. And I guess a big change like that. I just felt like walking away from the film that if Joe hadn't married, it might have made for a better story. I think it would have inspired women and girls that marriage isn't everything, and you don't always have to get married if you don't want to. I know I said I connect to Joe, but I guess that's the bit where it falls short, and maybe that's why I feel so strongly about this part in particular. It's just Joe seemed like a perfect character to me, who seemed a bit anti-feminist, but only to herself, and her only dream was to be a successful writer. I just think the character that Laura Alcott made Joe to be made her feel like she was bigger than marriage. Maybe it was a foolish dream, but yeah, I just mean, like, even looking back on my writing now, I'm like, yeah, I still stand with that, because I just think, I guess it's also what I felt about, because oh yeah, when I did my write-up about Bridget Jones, it was a thing where it was like, okay, Bridget got married to Mark, but Mark passed, and then I was just thinking to myself, oh, would it have been okay if Bridget was just alone with her children having a happy life? Like, would that have been fine? I just think there's the rhetoric that that women can't run households alone. Do you know what I mean? And they can't be alone either. Like, they can't enjoy their solitude. And if a woman is enjoying her solitude, then there's something wrong with that. I just believe they have this whole idea. And that's why I think when I was even talking about Bridget, it was a thing where I was saying my Bridget review, I was like, oh, let's not be afraid of the cat lady thing. Let's not be afraid of the cat lady thing, and that is maybe what, like, is in anybody or any of us, like any woman I mean, in any of our futures. If it is, that's okay. But I think that obviously, like, even cinema stories have that same thing. And like, I felt like I agreed with what I said in the article about, yes, in the time frame, it's a thing where of course Joe's gonna end up married. But I think even, I guess, with Bridget, it's a thing where I was like, oh, why has Bridget like found somebody again? She's in a relationship again. So I think it's the thing where I felt like, oh, it's outdated. And I was like, we're in modern times now. So I was like, if we're in modern times now, then why can't it be a thing where we see we see women doing fine on their own? And even like the Olivia D song from Bridget Jones, it's all right. I mean, it's not perfect, but it might be. I feel like that song to me envisions, like, yes, what it would be of just a woman enjoying her solitude with no man at the center of it. But hey, literally, that's just my opinion, because that's the thing. Like, that's the only thing where I was like, yes, Joe is a character that strikes a chord, like one of those kind of things, strikes a chord in me. But then it's also like it falls short, because I was like, no, I just think I don't have to say that, oh my gosh, I'm technically gonna get married. I also think that, yes, Joe's whole idea of, oh my gosh, I'm so lonely, yes, but it's like, if you're lonely, I think, it's like, of course, with loneliness, I do think, of course, it's a very hard subject, but you can overcome that loneliness by embracing your solitude more, if anything. But anyways, I'm moving on to, I think in the next bit in the article is going to be about Amy. Yeah, and I think, as you know, one thing to touch on before moving on to Amy is that, yes, I do think, like how I said on that last bit in the article, that, yes, I think what Laura Alcott made Joe to be, or maybe the beginning of meeting Joe as a character, is a thing where we are like to ourselves, it doesn't seem like marriage is on the card for Joe. So it's like we see ourselves in her for that reason. I think, like I was saying to you guys, I'm really enjoying the fact that I'm using this article, and then this article is not finished, so it's almost like I'm editing it while reading. But anyways, so on to Amy. Now, Amy, a vibrant character, I must say. I connected to Amy in the way that I'm sure she felt like the outcast, as being the youngest in the family, what makes it so hard to compare to her sisters. That's actually one of the main reasons I connected to her, actually, because I'm the youngest in my family also. Another reason is the fact that Amy paints, and I also paint. Plus, you could say I'm also the artist of my family too. But in a way, it doesn't always feel that way, as I know that my mother dabbled in art for some time, doesn't really do it anymore, but some of my mom's art pieces are still around the house. I guess I'm just the artist of the family right now, in the present day, but not the only one ever. And that although in the flashbacks they're all young, Amy, out of all four of them, gives the most youngest spark, actually. Or just the thing, like I said, that with her, you can tell they're in childhood, and that Amy is the youngest by the way she acts. The most memorable scene I recall is when Amy sees Dory in the present day, and she calls out to him. Oh yeah, that's some confusion. She's like, Lori, Lori. She's like, dress for. Wait, was it? It's Lori. And then Aunt Josephine's like, yes, I know it's Lori. Pipe down. She's like, keep your dress on. Like, calm down. But yeah, I love that. And she has such vibrance about her, and I love that about her, actually. Oh, this was from Wikipedia. Amy is the youngest sister and baby of the family. She's 12 when the story begins. Interested in art, she's described as a regular snow maiden with curly golden hair and blue eyes, pale and slender, and always carrying herself like a proper young lady. She's the artist of the family. Little Women, Wikipedia. I think when Amy meets Dory for the first time, you can tell she's the youngest from the offset, actually. The way she seems taken with him, and probably love at first sight, which she does admit to him later on in the film. She talks about fighting her entire life, being second to Joe in all things. And I think, as the youngest, that's another characteristic you can feel. As the youngest, you feel left out in most things, and you just accept most things to go to the oldest ones. That's actually another reason I can relate to Amy as being the youngest of my family. Also, it feels like you yourself are growing just the same as them, but at a slower pace, and they're ahead. Oh yeah, and they're ahead in the race called life. They're more settled and you feel like you don't even know what you're doing. But I don't feel like that rings true for Amy. I think as Amy as a character always seemed ambitious to me, and with her vibrant personality, that it seemed like she was the youngest in her family, but she was also very mature. See, I'm editing right now. Some of it's not like grammatically correct. Hold on, what is it? Yeah. She was very, in knowing where she stands in society, with feeling like just a woman and doing anything to get there, but also keep her dreams intact. I also do think, even if Amy didn't feel like it because she's a woman and she has to marry, she wouldn't want to get married anyway, because her nature just exudes wanting to be chosen by someone and also be chosen. In a way, when I think about the ending, I am happy that Amy did get all the things she wanted. Most of the sisters did, if not all. She tried until she got what she wanted. In the 1994 version, I think Amy was better, just in terms of the fact that Florence Pugh is supposed to be playing a 12-year-old, and sure, Florence is such a good actress, she can execute that in a good way and make it believable without being 12, but I guess casting Kirsten Dunst as Amy and being that age makes it more real, because that was very interesting to me. When I was watching the older version, I was like, oh, like, they obviously cast Kirsten Dunst as Amy, and I feel like Kirsten Dunst was... Like, we've obviously seen Kirsten Dunst, remember when she first started in acting. She was obviously also a young Claudia in Interview with a Vampire. But I feel like she was obviously, yes, perfect for Amy at that time anyways. And also, no, yeah, in the time era that it was made, and then just time era in general. But then I do feel like, obviously, Florence Pugh does a very good... a good what's it called, performance of that, because we know that Florence Pugh is playing somebody who's supposed to be 12 when she's in fact, like, I don't know, she's like, I think Florence Pugh's like 20 something. Oh wait, no, hold on, let's keep a check on that, because also, yeah, I mean, she's not 20 something. I feel like she might be like 30. Okay, 29. You see what I mean? I was on the 20s. One of the things that I did, the age, I didn't say a number afterwards, but yes, so the 20s. But it's that she was able to also make that embodiment of playing a 12-year-old and not being 12. It's because it's like, the thing that Hollywood does, which is so weird, which we all know, they put people in roles where, like, they put them in roles and they want us to believe that they're playing that role, when it's like, no, you're putting somebody in a role who's like 30 years old, but we can tell that they're 30. Do you know what I mean? Or I think I saw it just today, probably, or I saw it just today where people were talking about how what's this guy's name? The guy from 20th Century Girl. His name's like, is it Byung-Woo-sik, I think. Hold on a moment. Yeah, so Byung-Woo-sik, yeah, I was right. That he is obviously, I think he's going to be in another drama, which is going to be him in high school again. Because obviously, yeah, when he played in 20th Century Girl, he was also in school. And then he was obviously in Lovely Runner, that was also in school. And then I think the thing that I saw was saying something about how they keep putting him in school roles and he's almost 30 years old. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, we know that he's 30. And of course, he does have a face where it's like, it's believable, it's possible. Do you know what I mean? But it's also unnecessary. Do you know what I mean? But I'm saying, to do with Florence's one, it's like to be able to embody a 12-year-old at 29, or even whenever, how old she was when she played Amy in Little Women, is amazing. Okay, we said it's amazing. Okay, I think when they do it, yeah, what I'm trying to say is, in those two comparisons, is that when they do it with somebody like like, yeah, Bjorn Wusick or anyone else. Or I guess, when they do the high school one, because obviously when I spoke about high school, it's always them doing the high school ones where they're having grown adults play teens. And it's like, and then it's also just not, it's not believable. Because that's what I mean. My whole point is make it, like, do it, but make it believable at the same time. Do you know what I mean? Which is why, that's what I'm saying Florence did. Do you know what I mean? Where, like, we can tell that she's young. Because it's like, yeah, when I think about Florence playing Amy, I think about when Laurie's in the scene after he takes them home back to the March house. And then obviously Amy turns to Laurie and she's like, "I'm Amy." She's like, "I'm Amy, hi." And you're like, yeah, that's a 12-year-old right there. Like, that would be a 12-year-old for sure. And the way that she looks up at him, and it's like, and her eyes are all full of, I don't know, they're full of like adoration or like some kind of thing, but just the way that she's looking at him with doe eyes, like, and you can tell that, like, that she's the youngest out of her family. So yeah. Now we're moving on to Beth. Oh my God, Beth, my Shayla. But no, now Beth, the last of the March sisters and the best of them, according to Amy, is a different one to all of them. I think if you relate to Beth, it's about being so in touch with music and being the one that doesn't say too much, but is loved because of her delicate nature. Beth is the most introverted out of the foursome. On a greater scale, I feel like there could be some similarities in Amy and Beth in terms of maturity, and it's even shocking that in terms of ages, Amy is the youngest, but she does come off the most mature, to me anyways. It seems as though as introverted as it seems to me as introverted as Beth is, she's someone who follows the speak when spoken to method. I think because of Beth's such clean-hearted and, is it clean-hearted? I feel like maybe that's not. Do you see what I mean? When you're reading out your own writing, you're like, some of this is not right. And cool and calm nature. That this is why the sisters look to her as a voice. I feel like I should change clean and say pure. Yeah, such pure-hearted and cool and calm nature that this is why the sisters look to her as a voice of. They look to her as a voice of reason. One moment. Okay, yeah. So they look to her as a voice of reason. She is the key, the piece that they can't live without. I think in families, not that it takes place in every single one, that there is always one of them that holds the family and is the glue. Sometimes it can be the youngest, sometimes the oldest, depending on responsibilities they carry out. But I see that when the switch in the film changes after childhood ends and Beth gets ill, that she is the key. Also, her connection with music left them all silent. Yeah, silent and less joyful. I think a scene that resonated with me and I remember the most out of the film was when the love interest of Joe spots the piano in the corner filled with dust and no love and asks anyone plays, and they all share a moment where they cherish the memory of Beth and her love for music. I think that's something I also noticed as an introvert myself. Beth uses music as her way of having alone time. I think most introverts like to have things like that let them close off from the world and just be in their own space. I think for me personally, mine is either reading or writing or even doing an art piece. But I think out of all three of those, that reading is the one where I really am most closed off from the world the most. I guess when you're doing an art piece, you can be bothered and spoken to, but when you're reading, you just enter a world that is nothing like your own, if it's fiction, and you want to stay there, which is the same for Beth and piano. I've always loved that about her. I also think what's so amazing about Beth is she really did feel like the glue of her family. She didn't feel like she really had a place in their family, but she did. When I think about it, that's what makes her the best one out of all of them, the unique one. In the 1994 version, I really liked Claire Danes as Beth, actually. I feel like she captured Beth's character. I mean, both actresses did. I feel that way, to be honest, about all the actresses and not one versus the other. I thought that Riona was was a cute and funny Joe. Also, the sisters also referred to Beth as Sweet Beth, but in both films, they all refer to each other with sweet names such as that for their adoration for one another. A scene that really stood out to me as Claire Danes' Beth was when she was nearing the end and she said, "I'm not afraid of death," and it felt bittersweet because she was just happy to have Joe by her side and reach the end of her life. Yeah, Beth was so sweet. Sorry. I was having more flashbacks. But yeah, Beth was so sweet and Beth cared about all of them, and I think it is very interesting that they all held such a Beth in such adoration and such of a high pedestal. And that, like, the bit that I mentioned about the fact that Beth was no longer around, so that means nobody was really touching the piano, and I think that was gorgeous. Like, you know, when it's like, yeah, somebody's presence lives on even after they pass, and it's a thing that there's an object that is attached to them. I think that's always what's so important and interesting about, about like the term legacy, and the thing of always making your impact making your impact in the world, I mean, and that there's a thing that, like, even when you're gone, there's one thing that rings true. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if I think of an example right now, I'd say like Michael Jackson. Everyone talks about Michael Jackson, of his music. Sometimes, of course, the stuff, his allegations and stuff, that overshadows it. But one thing that rings true is that he was the king of pop. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, what reference can I use right now? But I was like, that's the only one I can actually think of. But it's the same thing. Like, I feel like, yeah, you want something, people will be like, oh yeah, that was Maria's thing. I'm like, it's like when you do that and you're like, you just want to pick up any kind of name to make your point, actually. But anyways, we're now moving on to Meg. Yeah, Meg. And I realized, and I think, it's funny because even when I was writing this, I realized that I did it in the wrong order. But I don't feel like I needed to have an order. I wanted to talk about all sisters individually, of course. So I felt like, I don't necessarily need to have an order. And it's the same with this episode too, because it's like, yeah, I'm just talking about Little Women as a whole, and that's why I kind of wanted to just touch on the March sisters. But yeah, it's funny because I start off saying, now reaching Meg, I'm starting to think I should have written this in order of the sisters' ages, but I realized what happened. I began this article starting off with my favorite, and that's why it's not in order. I guess bias takes it, like, it's in all forms of sorts, but I don't think as I reach Meg that there's any sister I dislike. I just think that I know which one mostly resonates with me, and that even the fact that Amy is the youngest and I'm the youngest, she's not someone that exactly mirrors me like Joe's does. Someone who also relates to the frustrations of being a woman and what women are said to be. Joe is a comfort character to me. But let's talk about Meg. Last but not least, as I'm sure she is the second oldest, but it turns out my calculations were in fact wrong, because Meg is the older sister. The oldest is 16 when the story starts. She's described as a beauty and manages the household when her mother is absent. She has long brown hair and blue eyes and particularly beautiful hands, and is seen as the prettiest one of the sisters. I guess, that's what I mean. Like, when you think about Meg as a character, it's like, yeah, of course she was going to be the one to, like, be more into wanting, leading to how her dreams did. It's obviously, remember when I touched on it on earlier with her saying, just because my dreams are different from yours doesn't mean they're any less important. But I just mean Meg is the older sister and has most of the, most of the things that come with being older sister, and it's like being very nurturing and mothering and like all those like sorts of traits. And that's probably why she obviously wanted to have her own safety, like her own safety net. And I think that's normal. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like also as the oldest, and I think that's where her thing of wanting pretty garms and stuff is the fact that she feels like she'd been the mother when her mother was absent. So she wanted to be able to give stuff to herself than like when she's trying to look after her siblings. And it can get like that. Do you know what I mean? I think when it's like you're responsible for other people, you then neglect yourself, because it's like you've obviously what's it called? Yeah, you've put so much time and effort into those people that you kind of forget like what you need. And then it comes off as like selfishness, but it's also not, because it's like you've done so much for others that you've forgotten about you. Do you know what I mean? So this is what I mean. Now that I'm thinking about it, I really do get Meg. Like, do you know what I mean? I feel like, and then I guess if I say about my point back onto like the title of what my article is, which is obviously I relate to all of them, I would just say like with Meg, it's like, I feel like for me, I would say that, yeah, like I'm very materialistic. It's not a bad thing. I don't think it's bad to be materialistic. And I think most things, what happens of being materialistic is that like you feel like you don't really have the means, like you don't have the means to be materialistic, but you long to be. Do you know what I mean? You long for those frilly things, even though you know it's not necessarily what you need. Like it's not a necessity, but you want it anyway. So it's like I feel like that is how we can all see ourselves also in Meg. Like, do you know what I mean? She has been a mother hen, and all she wants is things for herself. So yeah. And I think like in the movie when Laurie's mean to her, it's like it was so unnecessary. It was so unnecessary. He was like, "Oh, you don't look like a march. You don't like a march daughter or whatever." And we're like, okay. It was like you're just butting yourself into people's business. But hey, but no, that was crazy, because yeah, he was too tough on her. And I think even in that scene in particular, I think that was Meg. Like, yeah, she was dressing up, and she dressed herself up like a dolly. And I think it's the thing where, because she dressed up, she did forget who she was. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but she was in that role, and it's who she aspired to be. It was almost like her alter ego. And then, and then you have Laurie being like, "Oh, but that's not who you are." And we're like, "Okay, can't you give us a moment to like, dream, like to just have a moment where we're like, oh my gosh, if only that was us." You know what I mean? It's not, but if only, right? Yeah, back to the article. I always felt like Meg did the second oldest vibes to me, and that Jo strikes herself as the oldest. But it turns out the ages go 16, 15, 13, and 12. So Meg and Jo are only 1 year apart, which does make sense now that I think about it, as Jo and Meg did get to go to things with each other twice in the whole entire film, and Beth and Amy were nowhere to be seen as the youngest ones. One thing that differentiates in both films, I feel like, though, is that Amy in the 2019 version feels more mature to me than the 1994 version. Maybe it's because Kirsten Dunst, who plays Amy in the 1994 version, is actually the age at the time of the film as her character is supposed to be. So maybe that's why it feels more believable. And it feels like her and Laurie's relationship flows better as well, almost. Laurie tells Amy in the 1994 version, "I promise to kiss you before you die." And it feels more romantic that way, as a young girl who knows nothing about love yet. It's sweet, actually. Whereas in the 2019 version, Amy and Laurie's relationship, to me anyway, just feels more rushed. It does feel like he just moves on to her because she's a March daughter and not because he actually loves her. But I think I realise now, in the 1994 version, Laurie just had to realise he loved Amy, and that's all it boils down to. Also, back to Meg, I think talking about both Megs in both films is a good place to start. I like both of them, actually. I feel like... Excuse me. I feel like also one isn't better than the other. They both just showcase what it is to be Meg as a character, someone who dreads poverty almost and wants to be in with the it crowd. But that statement isn't fair to her. But anyway, I feel like something that was different was that it felt like the Meg in the 2019 version wanted frills and fancy things more than the 1994 version. I mean, the events that take place are practically the same, with how after Laurie runs into Amy at the ball event and sees how different she looks, she decides to put it all away. It's the same in that aspect, but I do feel like the Meg in the 2019 version just went on and on about it, and I think it took her longer to sit with it, because I think a scene that differs in the 2019 version is that even after Meg and Mr. Brooke marry and they have their 2 kids, Meg still goes out to spend something that she shouldn't have. Looking back, you realize that in all families there always has to be a dynamic, the part where you fit, the puzzle piece. Yeah, the puzzle piece. Every single sister in the March family fits. They have their unique quirks and personalities. And do you know what is also real about the March sisters? They have friction. A family can't be perfect all the time, and especially a house full of girls. It's human nature for humans to fight one another, and so even in a house full of boys and girls, the story still remains. But a house with just girls is bound to have problems, especially for Amy, who, when she says, "I've been second to Joe my whole life," that even problems like that arise. Fighting over boys and fighting over who's better. In the end, of course, Amy as the painter is the one who's picked to go on the trip and not Joe. But in the course of the film, we see a thread between Amy and Joe, a slight competition that appears so subtle. Even in the battle of who wins Laurie, it's Amy in the end. In the film, we can see the disappointment of Joe's face when Laurie even breaks the news to her and when she hugs Amy. It's noticeable but subtle. It's so interesting with that scene in particular, because after practically being at each other's necks and having their sisterly quabbles, they decide to just put down their swords and love one another. And that's what is so beautiful about the March family. One always loves their sister. They're the type of family to not let little trivial things ruin the bond they all have with one another. It's the beauty of families. I do feel like that's what the connection is with Little Women, why it's inspired a group of women, a group of little women also, because we all feel like the Little Women sisters do. It's the reason why this film and even this book can be a lot of women's comfort films / books. It's the way that in the film, the switch really does take place, and it feels like just as childhood does, and all the light is taken away, because the first few times you watch the film, you do realise all the things the sisters used to do together and how bright the house was with family holidays and plays. And then when the childhood slipped away, the house became dim and dark. Most of the sisters flew the nest, and the only one that remained was Beth. Even with the picture above, I do think the person who was mostly affected by the sudden change of childhood into adulthood was Joe. I think as life started to change, she started to miss the way it used to be with her sisters, and she was just lonely, not even in a romantic sense, but in general. She was missing the life she used to have, which was the cause for her loneliness. I also think no one knows anything about growing up until it happens. One minute you're young and the next you're slightly older. You just feel like a tall child, like how people say Joe felt. It felt like she aged, but in her mind, not a lot changed. She still reminisced and longs to be young again, but I just think that's a universal experience, which is what is so great about Little Women. It feels like a warm hug because of the things that take place in this film, plus at its core, it is about family, and family are always important. As someone who has such love for this story, I'm so happy to have started the series of the book and grow even more attached to the March sisters. And that reaches the end of the reading of the article. I obviously need to go back and finish finish it in general, plus also make tweaks. Actually, I retract that. No edits. I kind of feel like, you know, when you think about when you're writing something and it's like if you over tweak it, then it's gonna lose its it's gonna lose its beauty. It's better to just write it to just write it and leave as is, and that's about it. Maybe again, I think I just posted it now, but maybe again I will end up, what's the word, yeah, I will end up probably maybe editing it over the months, but I kind of just felt like I wanted to just press the button and just be done with it, basically. Actually, it says on Medium that that article is a 20-minute read. 20 minutes, guys. I'm going to obviously put it in the description, but if you would like to read it, then you can. Obviously, I've read it for you in this episode, but if you would like to read it yourself, that's also okay. But 20 minutes is such a long time, and I feel like it might be, I wouldn't say maybe is it the longest piece I've ever written? I'm not entirely sure, but it is a very long piece, and I feel like it has a lot of words, and I wouldn't even want to read it again. But you know, I know why it's that long, because I do love Little Women very much. Like I mentioned in earlier, I love Malcolm Todd. I love, not even love. I love Little Women. And if anyone wants to mention Little Women around me, yeah, you'd put me on a tangent. You would put me on it would become a lecture. Yeah, you would not want to be sat for that. Wrap up, I'm just going to touch on some places. I wanted to go back and touch on the proposal scene and how the proposal scene was only called out, it was originated as, they call it the proposal scene from all the different adaptations that have been done over the years, all the Little Women, because I remember when I was watching this YouTube video, I wonder if I can find it, because if I can, then I would like to obviously, credit it, that it was a video where it was just talking about all of the Little Women adaptations and how, what's it called, and how, it was just called the proposal scene is what it used to be before, and then it became, then when you think of the 2019 version, you think of the hill scene, more so than it being called the proposal scene. But obviously it's all it's all one and the same. It's just nobody really uses the proposal scene as that term anymore. We can't have it out, Joe. I have loved you for as long as I've known you, Joe, and I waited, which is fine, but I must make you hear me now because I can't go on anymore like this. And oh my gosh, actually, I need to touch on probably one more thing, I think, to wrap up. I think if I didn't, I would actually die. But I was gonna touch on the fact that Christian, I think I touched on it a little bit. I mean, remember I spoke about how in the proposal scene, Christian Bale kisses Joe in the 1994 version, which is so weird. Timothy's version of Laurie, he does it in such a subtle way. His way of doing it is when Joe says the line of, "Oh, can we run off on a pirate ship?" He just gives her his expression is a thing where he didn't even have to say anything. And then Joe goes, "Oh, no," do you know what I mean? Because just he gives her a pause. It's giving it's what do they call it? A millennial pause. That's what it is. He gives her just that, and then he's like, yeah, and then it starts the chase where he's like, "We gotta have it out, Joe," and then, "I love you, Joe. I love you, Joe," and we're like, this guy is yearning, and then it's like, I'd rather die than be happy with this, Joe. And he's like, but the "I love you, Joe" part's my favorite part, basically. I mean, in their whole entire what do we call it, argument back and forth, that's my favorite bit, because it's she's telling him all these things as to why they can't be together, and he's like, I love you, Joe, and we're like, wow, this guy's obsessed with her. So, and he's like, I gave her familiars, everything you didn't like, which is fine. And we're like, yeah, it's crazy. It's interesting because I thought I saw something on TikTok as well, which was like, "Oh, are you Laura, are you Joe?" in that conversation. And I know that I'm Laurie, which is crazy, but I'm Laurie. I did a TikTok of myself. I think I did a TikTok myself. At some point I did one, and I was I was recreating the Laurie line, because I know what it's like to be what's it called, on the other side, but the person on the other side, who's the person who has the unrequited feelings rather than the person who says no, basically. I know like what that's like. And that last button, and certainly not least, there's also Little Women, the K-drama, which came out in 2022, which was only one season. And that was, I don't know, that one was obviously, I was going to say better, but then I'm also like, no. But it's just like, Little Women K-drama was very good because obviously it's about three sisters who never had, like, I'll press on the Wikipedia. They never have, three poor sisters, depicts the zeal of three poor sisters for money, independence, and love. The supposedly dead friend of one of their sisters left her 7 billion one behind, but the people behind it, Korea's richest family, would do anything to stop them. So it's like, I like that this story that they did with Little Women, because it's like, obviously they did it, like, kind of, what's it called, inspired by, this is what I mean. It said, what's it called, that the screenwriter who did it was saying, I'm working with the director of Vincenzo for a Korean adaptation of Little Women. I actually read the book Little Women when I was young and I really loved it. So I really liked that, what they did with this kind of Little Women, because even what I was talking about with the video is the thing where there's been so many adaptations of Little Women, like I think it's 1993, 1990, 1949, 1994, 2017 and 2019. But then of course, if you think about it, then you also have the Korean version, which is made in 2022. So you could obviously add that year into the mix also. But I like that. I just mean that, of course, with their story, they made it the same with it being like sisters. Of course, it's three instead of instead of four. But like obviously it's still the same kind of precipice of being a family that are out of poverty, like a family out of poverty, and wanting to get what they want. And then I also feel like with this TV series, like with this Korean version, is that, you know, they gave it a twist, do you know what I mean? Not even like, oh, it's just about Little Women and it's the same kind of thing. It's literally like, when I watched Little Women, like, I was like, oh, it has a different twist to it. Like, do you know what I mean? It has, like, similar, obviously, things, because they all kind of also even have traits to, I feel like, some of the Little Women sisters as well. But obviously, I do think that, more so this Little Women kind of just pushes forward the thing of their supposedly dead friend, and that obviously money falling in their lap. Do you know what I mean? So it's more that kind of thing. Like Little Women the film, of course, never touches on anything like that, but it makes you wonder, what would they have done? Like, as in, what would the March sisters have done if they had found money like that? Do you know what I mean? So yeah. And obviously the genre is mystery and family drama. And you know what? I'd give anything to watch Little Women again, because obviously it was just so, like, the thing about Little Women was it was so thrilling, and it had you on edge every single time. So yeah, if you hadn't heard about that series until now, I think you should give it a watch, because of course it would be interesting to see the story in a different way. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just the way in what we already know and what it has been so far. And obviously this one, obviously, I mean, the Korean drama is the most recent version of Little Women. I feel like they're probably done doing it again, even though I did see the other day that Little Women is also going to be in theatres sometime soon. I think a play. Let me also search that quickly before I finish the episode, just so you know, for future reference. Yeah, so the Little Women play is going to be on until the 6th of May to the 1st of November. But I think it's not going to be, if we're talking about London, it's not going to be here for very long. I think when I was looking at it the other day, it only says it's going to be it's only going to be in London for I think for a few days. But it was only to the 6th, to the 7th or something. Yeah, it was the 6th or the 7th. Of course, if I do find out, I'll put it in the description just so people know. But thank you for listening, and hope to see you in the next one.